I am going to now turn it over to Reed, who will share some directions and information about interpretation.
Thank you, Amy, and good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be here with you all. As Amy mentioned, we do have interpretation for English and Spanish. We're just going to walk you through how to connect to your language channel. And Senia, if we can do this consecutively to finish this announcement, we'll make this both in English and in Spanish.
Sí, entonces, hola, buenas tardes. Como dijo Amy, tenemos interpretación en inglés y en español y vamos a ir diciendo las instrucciones en español y en inglés.
So as you see on your screen, in just a moment, there will be this globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you click on that globe, you can choose either English or Spanish.
Entonces, como ven en la parte inferior de su Zoom, van a ver un icono de un globo y ahí pueden hacer clic y elegir inglés o español.
If you've joined today from a cell phone or a tablet, you'll actually need to find the 3 dots button right next to the word more. And after clicking that, language interpretation will be an option in that list.
Si están participando desde un celular o una tableta, entonces tienen que buscar el botón de los 3 puntos y ahí hacer clic y van a ver la frase Language Interpretation y ahí pueden escoger el idioma.
And one final reminder, even if you do speak English, please do find the globe and select English. That way you can hear the English interpretation of anything that's shared in Spanish today.
Y un recordatorio más es que si aunque hablen inglés, por favor escojan el inglés, porque así van a poder escuchar toda la presentación de hoy. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Senia. All right, now that globe is on everyone's screen. Ahora todos deberían ver ese icono de un globo. Please take a moment to choose your language. Por favor, seleccionen su idioma. And I'll turn it right back over to you.
Thank you so much, Reed from Excel Linguistics. We're so happy to have you and your team with us today. So as folks are joining, I'm going to get the slides started and we will have a link to the slides in Spanish. So let me pull the slides up. And if everybody could just, if you want to update your pronouns, we are recording the meeting. We are recording the meeting both in English and Spanish. And you can see down at the bottom on your Zoom bar, there's an option for chat, which we will enable for this meeting, as well as Q&A. And so you can use both boxes. I see Diane Curtin has her hand raised. So if you want to put in chat, if you have a question, we can answer it that way. And we will plan to have the content piece of the webinar for about 40 minutes, and then we will have plenty of time for questions and answers. But please stop me, put it in the chat, put a Q&A. We have our full team from Strategies for Children with us today, and they will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A boxes. And then we will certainly send a follow-up email with all of this information, including the slides and where you can find the recordings, both in English and Spanish. So let's get started. What we know is that on Tuesday, November 8th in Massachusetts, there was history made. And this is a direct quote from a story that ran on WGBH. Maura Healey, the state's current attorney general and newly minted governor-elect, will also be the first openly gay governor of Massachusetts and is the first lesbian to be elected governor in the United States. We also know that Andrea Campbell is the first Black woman to serve as president of the Boston City Council and is now the first woman of color to win a statewide contest in Massachusetts. So history was made, and these are the offices that were up for election in 2022. So you can see here, the first 6 offices are called the constitutional offices, and they represent everybody in Massachusetts. And they each have a 4-year term. So the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of the Commonwealth, attorney general, treasurer, and auditor. And then we'll talk about who won all those races in 1 minute. And then you can see the state senator and state representatives. They run every 2 years. And then our US delegation, our US House of Representatives, the delegation from Massachusetts, there are 9 of them. They also ran for re-election and election, and they have 2-year terms. And so these are the winners for the 2022 election in Massachusetts. Maura Healey was elected governor. Mayor Kim Driscoll from the city of Salem was elected lieutenant governor. They are new to their offices. Secretary of State William Galvin was re-elected to be Secretary of State. Andrea Campbell was elected as Attorney General. Deb Goldberg was re-elected as our state treasurer. And Diana DiZoglio was elected for the first time as our auditor. Diana DiZoglio has served in the State House in Massachusetts. And then we will talk more about the state senators and representatives. And then all 9 of our US representatives were re-elected. And we're going to start with the federal level first. And so Massachusetts is represented in Congress by 2 US senators and 9 US representatives. So like the 6 constitutional offices in our state government, both Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Ed Markey represent everybody who lives in Massachusetts. And this is every state in the country has 2 US senators. And you can see that underneath the Senate is elected kind of in they're staggered elections. So you can see the dates when our US Senator elections happen. So 2024 and 2026. There were some states that had US senators that were re-elected or elected in this cycle, but it's staggered so that the entire Senate is not potentially turning over at the same time. And all this information is based on your home address. This is a slide that shows our Massachusetts representatives in the United States House of Representatives. And so we have 9 districts, and you can see all of these representatives ran for re-election, and they all won. So those 2 slides that we have used previously do not need to change. They are consistent. There was no US Senate election in Massachusetts, but all 9 of our US reps did run for re-election. And we will get to the part where we talk about where you can find your elected officials. And so for the United States House of Representatives, Massachusetts is broken up into 9 congressional districts. So you have representation by 2 US senators and 1 US rep. And there has been some redistricting in Massachusetts. And so after folks get sworn in, the website from the Secretary of State will be updated so that you can see who represents you. Eve Gilmore, I see you have your hand raised, so I can let you come live. So if you want to unmute, Eve.
Sorry, sorry, Amy, I'm sorry about that. It was an accident, but just cheering on the election as we went.
Great, thanks so much. And one thing to remember is when we fill out the census every 10 years, that is how representation is established in the House of Representatives at the United States Congress. So Massachusetts used to have 10 districts. After the census in 2000, we lost a House seat that went to another more populated state that had grown. And so now we have 9 districts. So the census was most recently done in 2020, and part of that process is redistricting across the country. So if we turn to the Massachusetts legislature, and remember the state capital is Boston, where the state house is, all 200 seats were up for election. And as we saw earlier, each state senator and state representative have a 2-year term. And this is a little bit of what happened in the Senate and the House of Representatives. So in Massachusetts, we have 40 state senators, 37 Democrats and 3 Republicans were elected. And in the Massachusetts House of Representatives, there are 160 members. 132 Democrats were declared winners, 26 Republicans. As of Friday, there were 2 races not called yet. And we will continue to update that information. I don't know if they were able to be called this morning, but as of Friday, they were not called yet. And if you think about the state, everybody has the constitutional officers and the US Senate. Then there's 9 districts for our representation in the US House of Representatives. There's 40, the state's divided up 40 ways for the state Senate, and then 160 ways for the Massachusetts House of Representatives. And the way that we think about it is each state senator has about 5 reps that all cover the same district. And so when you think about in government, the closest person to the people and representing the fewest amount of people is your state house representatives. So they have smaller districts than anyone, just the way that the state is divided in their job, but there are also many more of them working together in the legislature. We also had 4 ballot questions in Massachusetts, and you can see here, this was a graphic from the Boston Globe, that all precincts were not reporting at this point, but they had declared the winners of the ballot questions. So the first ballot question was often called the millionaire's tax, and that did pass. Question 2 was around dental insurance, that also passed. Question 3 is around liquor sales, and that did not pass. And then question 4 was around driver's licenses, and that did pass. We have received many questions about question 1 and what that means. We will feature this on our 9:30 call in the morning to go deeper into this question and what the implications are. There's been a lot of articles written about this, what this means for you as a taxpayer, what this means to you as an advocate. We know that the funding that is projected to be collected through this is geared to go toward education and transportation. The details have not been worked out yet, so we don't know how much is going where. We don't know what that looks like for early education and care. So this is an issue that we will be paying attention to closely, and I'm sure we will have opportunities to share more information and also get people more involved as the session starts. So far, any questions? I'm going to take a look at the chat. And if you haven't had a chance, can you please just type in the chat where you are Zooming from and your first and last name. But any questions, you can also raise your hand and we can have you come live. Any questions so far and what we've covered? And we are offering translation. And so if you are in there should be a globe at the bottom of your Zoom bar if you would like to go to the Spanish speaking interpretation. Now, one thing that we have learned by working and sharing this information with advocates is sometimes you think that you should know all of this information. And we are here to say that if you don't know who represents you, that is okay. It's very easy to find out and think about how you can take action. But we know that sometimes people feel like they don't want to ask questions because they think it might be a silly question or they should know the answer. And we really want to make sure we have this opportunity today to share the information and to address any questions. So please, and you can, if you want to just chat to the host and panelists so we can see it, or you can chat to everybody and we can share the questions. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So as we look ahead for the all these people who have been elected, you can see starting at the top with the governor and the lieutenant governor. They will get sworn into office on January 5th. And the Senate president swears them in to their new offices. So what that means is between today, November 21st, and January 5th, the same governor, the same offices are still in effect. So just because we had an election, nothing has changed yet. Everything will change in January. So that also means that last week, Governor Baker signed a big economic development bill that will put dollars into early education and care. There is still work happening at the State House. So up until January 5th, we are still working in the session, the 2021, excuse me, 21-22 session. So on January 5th, the governor and lieutenant governor get sworn in, and then you'll see the Secretary of State, Attorney General, Treasurer, and Auditor happen a few days later on January 18th. And then you can see that the state senators and state representatives get sworn in on January 4th. So they will get sworn in first, and then the next day, the governor, lieutenant governor will get sworn in. And there's also a tradition in Massachusetts that the governor, it's called the Lone Walk, and the governor will has the option to walk out the front door of a state house, kind of symbolically leaving that part that his or her term is over, and they walk out the front door of the State House. When Governor Deval Patrick was done his office, he did do the Lone Walk, and so it's very ceremonial and symbolic of one transition of a governor leaving and a new governor coming into office. And so you might be wondering what's happening now. And so one of the things that happenings is the day after the election, Governor-elect Maura Healey and Lieutenant Governor-elect Kim Driscoll met with Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito. And both administrations have vowed for a smooth transition. And so we would expect, just like if somebody's starting a new job, that the governor and lieutenant governor will share information with the incoming administration, and even physical moving. So the governor's office is in the State House, so that will physically, the Governor Baker will move out, and the Governor-elect Healey will move in. Often during this time, the administration has transition teams. And just on Friday, I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to share a website where it was announced on Friday that there will be transition teams have been named for some of the pieces for the Healey and Driscoll administration. And so this is a website, and we will put this link in the chat. And if you can see over here, there is an orange box that says join our team. And so if you are interested in being part of the transition, joining a transition team, or even joining the administration, if you click on that link, and we'll do that afterward, I go through the transition, you submit your name, your contact information, your resume, and a cover letter if you would like. And then kind of you choose what area you are most interested in working. So that is a very transparent, open process to engage folks who are doing work on the ground, advocates, to join the transition. If we go down here, you can see that there's a section for the transition committees. And so I'm going to click on that link. Can somebody give me a thumbs up? To make sure that you can see this screen. So this is the screen with the transition. And there have been some transition committees already announced. So this first one is how we get around. That sounds like infrastructure and transportation. And you can see each committee has co-chairs, or in some cases more than two. The next transition team is affordable, abundant housing, and the co-chair is there. And what you can see is, I'm sure at some point we'll be able to click on these to see who members are. Then there's climate, readiness, resiliency, and adaptation. And it's really about the climate crisis. There are jobs and a flourishing economy for all. You can see this has 4 co-chairs, including JD Tesloff, who runs the Massachusetts Business Roundtable, who is a former chair of the Early Education and Care Board. Their work through the pandemic really was was really connected to early education and childcare. So we expect that he will, bring up those issues as he sits on that committee. Thriving youth and young adults, and this description is: how do we address learning loss from the pandemic and give all children and families equitable access to the educational, social, emotional, and behavioral supports they need? So this is where we expect the conversations around early education through the continuum will happen. And you can see Amanda Fernandez from Latinos for Education and Superintendent Rachel Manores from the Worcester Public School will be there as co-chairs. We also have safe and healthy communities for all ages, and we expect that would be about healthcare. And then if you click on this link, you can see that this is the place where you can join the team, and that is the Google form that you will fill out. You can put what area you're most interested in, and your resume and cover letter. So we will put that link in chat right now. I'm going to check the chat to see if we have any question. So there is a question: if there is it typical to have open transition team application for transition teams? We have seen it happen many different ways. And so I think this is an opportunity that it feels very open. Other administrations have done things differently. Some have very large transition teams, some have small transition teams. So this is, this is kind of the way that the Healy Driscoll administration is handling this. So thank you for that question. I will go back now to the slides. And please keep the questions coming. Okay. So you saw in, so those are the transition teams, and we would expect that work to happen in November and December and maybe early January. Now, once January happens, as we saw, there'll be the swearing in ceremonies, and then the next legislative session will start. In Massachusetts, our legislative session is 2 years. So January 2023, and it will run through July 2024 for the formal sessions. As we're learning now, on the even years that could be election years, the legislature meets in, it's called informal sessions. So work can still get done, but they are in informal sessions. When we think about the next legislative sessions happening, there will be a deadline for bills to be filed at the State House, and that is Friday, January 20th. So by then, legislators who have been elected, re-elected, sworn in, will work to submit the bills that they want to file for this legislative session. Historically, we have seen between 5,000 and 6,000 bills filed at the State House. And the process, a bill gets filed, it gets assigned to a committee, and there's a whole process of how bills move forward through the legislative process. We will continue to have webinars as that becomes more relevant, to think about how we can influence legislators and the bills that are being heard. What this does mean is that right now, people are working on their legislative agendas. So even if you just got elected and you're starting your new job in January, you are already thinking about what bills you want to file, what issues you want to focus on. And there's a lot of conversation happening about that right now. So we can't wait until January to try to think about what we would like to see in the legislative session. We also know that part of the legislature, each chamber elects its own, elects its own leaders. So the Speaker of the House, the Senate President. And then each of those leaders works to appoint leaders for all the committees. So there's a lot of transition that happens January through February. So you saw the kind of technical swearing in ceremony that happens. So as soon as this all happens, the next thing is the committee assignments, legislative leaders, and kind of getting to the business of working in government. And so what we know is Senator Jason Lewis and Representative Alice Peisch have both been chair of the Education Committee. And remember, the Education Committee has, deals with issues from early education all the way through K-12. And then there's also a committee in higher education. And so we work very closely with legislators. There are also members of each of those committees from both the House and the Senate. So that's another transition time where we will be monitoring that and sharing information as it becomes available. But that also means in the beginning, just like anybody starting a new job with a new team, it takes some time for people to get settled, to understand, what their positions are, and then what that means kind of for going forward. And I saw a question in the chat about what is the role of the transition team. And the transition teams often serve as kind of advisors to a new administration. So questions might be like, what are the hot topics in each of those areas? What are solutions that are potential, that we should think about for the next legislative session? How should work be organized? And I think anytime, in some ways it's like a listening tour and hearing from people who are doing the work inside and outside of government. It really is a chance to weigh in to say, this is where we are, this is the progress that we've made, and then this is kind of what we would hope for the future. But as you come in, especially as a governor who now will have, the job to look at all of these different issues, to think about kind of what the governor ran on for her platform, what she wants to get done as governor. And then kind of what does that mean for legislation? What does that mean for the state budget? We'll talk more about that in a minute. But the transition teams really serve in an advisory role and I believe a connection to kind of folks who are doing the work every day and really know each of those areas very well. And just a reminder, so there'll be potential changes in the legislature with committees and leadership. There will also be changes in the cabinet level for the governor. And so this is a snapshot of the governor of education in Massachusetts. So you have Governor Charlie Baker, and then the cabinet position for the governor is the secretary. And right now that's Secretary Jim Pizer. And we do have an executive office of education. There's the Secretary of Transportation, there's a Secretary of Health and Human Services. So the governor has cabinet members in many of the huge issue areas that work as an advisor to support the governor. And the way education works is there's three departments of education: early education and care, elementary and secondary, and higher education. Each of those departments has a board, and the board appoints a commissioner. And kind of where we are right now in the process is when a new governor gets elected, that governor can appoint a new chair to each of the three state agencies. And what we know in early education and care, that Chair Noni Lasso, who Governor Baker appointed when he won his first term, Board Chair Noni Lasso is stepping down, and Paul Belsito will now be the board chair in the Department of Early Education and Care. And so once Noni steps down, that transition will happen. And so again, this can be a very a transitional time for government. We know people are working in all these agencies. We know that work has to continue through the transition, but we also know that there could be big changes coming to the departments. And as our wise friend Charlie Stefanini says, those who say don't know, and those who know don't say. I think we've gotten a lot of questions like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen with the leadership? And right now we don't know. We can expect that there will be leadership changes. We would expect Governor-elect Healy to appoint a new Secretary of Education, but we just don't know kind of the timing of that. and when any of that will happen. So that will be another piece that will be monitoring over the next few months. So there's a question, is Paul an interim or he's the next board chair? So I believe he will be named board chair right now. I don't think they use the word interim, but that's a good question, Donna. We can follow up. But as you can see, Commissioner Amy Kershaw is acting Commissioner Kershaw because she came in to complete, she came in March. And so all of these, this will all be clear in a few months. But right now, I think there's some feeling and anxiety and just what's going to happen and a lot of questions. So please continue to ask questions around that, and we will monitor that as well. And we just wanted to kind of take a high level look of what happens next in the legislature. And so you saw the swearing in, the bill filing deadline we talked about. What happens when a new governor is elected is they have a little bit more time to release their first budget proposal. So typically we see the governor release a budget the last week of January, the last Wednesday. The new governor gets a little bit more time. And you have seen it usually in February, sometimes March, mostly in February. And this is the kind of the first thing, the first legislation that gets, filed by the new governor typically. It's usually called House 1 in the beginning of the session. And we know that through the state budget and the economic development bill that was signed last week, we have seen historic funding for early education and care, between those two documents. So this is also kind of the first opportunity that we get to see kind of where the priorities are for a new governor, what the total budget will be. The governor will still be paying attention to the kind of the revenue projections, where we are with the money that we have available in Massachusetts. But that also means that the budget process, like once it gets going, it's a little more compressed than typically we see in a typical budget year. As we talked about, there'll also be potential legislative leadership changes and committees announced. That also determines where legislators sit in the State House. So if you are a newly elected legislator, for the first few months, you are typically all together in one room at the State House. And so as the legislators are there, they're waiting for committee assignments, because where everybody sits at the State House is determined by your committee assignment. We will invite all the newly elected legislators to join us on the 9:30 call, 2 to 3 at a time, so we can get to know the new legislators and have a chance to share some information about where we are in early education and care. Then you can see in April, the House of Representatives will file their budget. In May, the Senate will do theirs. And then in June, the conference committee debates, and then the new fiscal year starts. And that's a typical, then it becomes more typical of a calendar. And then all those bills that were filed on January 20th get assigned to committees. Every bill gets a public hearing. They tend to happen more in the fall, because the budget is really taking up most of the attention the first part of the session. And remember, we have 2 years in Massachusetts once a bill is filed to get it passed by the end of the legislative session. So that means all the bills that were filed during this session, which we're in right now, anything that doesn't get passed is technically dead. And folks have to decide whether they're going to refile the same bill, whether they're going to adjust it or not file it at all. And so where we are right now is after January 5th, so after everybody is sworn in, if you visit wheredoivotema.com, you will be able to confirm your new elected officials. If you go now, it's going to give you everything for what we have right now. So Charlie Baker is still the governor, your same delegation in Massachusetts is the same. So waiting until after that, and we'll send plenty of information so folks can do that. Sending letters, congratulations letters to newly elected and re-elected to congratulate them and remind them to prioritize young children. Really reach out and encourage program leaders, educators, advocates to introduce yourselves to newly elected officials. When we started doing the first year tour, if you think about starting a new job where you might not know a lot of people, you might not know exactly how things get done, you might know about it academically, but to really understand how it happens in the process, the first year legislators are learning along with everybody. And so this is a great opportunity, even if you have the same representative or senator that you maybe haven't been able to connect with yet, it's a great opportunity. The easiest thing to do is to send congratulations. Once you know who represents you and where your program might be, add them to your email list and to your mailing list. So anytime you send something out, they're getting a copy as well. Invite them to come to your programs. Again, January to April is a very busy time for them internally. So don't be disappointed if they can't make it then, but it's great to get the ask in and to develop a relationship with their staff. That's the other piece that's happening. Everybody, staff may change, new staff will be added. So that's another another place to get to know folks. Building relationships, even if there was no change. Join our first year tour call. And so it's been so great. We did it first in 2020. And it really was, it was amazing to have them join the call. And it's just a kind of a meet and greet, get to know them. Tell us about why you decided to run and what you hope to do. And we also know that many folks worked with the Common Start Coalition and the bill that they filed. They are planning on filing a bill and working with legislators to file a bill for next session. Those conversations are happening now. And I know Common Start is having an event next week to really continue to gather input from folks. We also know from Strategies for Children, we are working on the early childhood agenda, which has been an incredible experience to have people really digging in deep to issues that the workforce, financially secure programs and families, and local infrastructure and partnership. I shouldn't be naming them because I'm going to leave something out, but you can look on the links, the earlychildhoodagenda.org. We're having a kind of bringing it all together meeting tomorrow. And the 9:30 call is going strong at 9:30 in the morning. And we have added 9:30 calls at night, as well as 9:30 calls. We had our first one in Spanish last Thursday. So that is a separate link. So if you sign up for that, you will get information for both calls. Both are open to anybody who wants to participate. And we would encourage you to join us when you can on the 9:30 call in the morning or the 9:30 call at night. And the most important piece right now is to stay informed. And we also acknowledge and appreciate and understand the work that you're doing every day with young children and families and staff. So please depend on us. Help us, ask us questions, tell us what you need to know more about, tell us the best way to communicate to you. Stay connected. You're going to see more articles about the new governor and the new administration coming in. You're going to probably see more activity from your local elected officials. Have everybody in your program understand who represents them, so that when after they get sworn in, that you can work as a team to make sure everybody in your team knows who represents them. Write personal notes. The handwrittens are the best. Send children's artwork. Encourage the families that you work with to also reach out and be connected. Offer to be a resource. And we hear this so many times. As folks are coming into office, they are not going to be experts in everything. They are going to need people on the ground who can help and share information and help, be the resource on the ground. Develop a plan to stay engaged. We often say no one-hit wonders. You can send a congratulations note and think that you're done. We know that like any relationships that you build, staying in touch, using opportunities to be connected, sharing new information, inviting them to events is a great way. And then following them on social media. I guess on Friday, I didn't know what the future of Twitter would be, but we know Facebook, we know Instagram, and we know just signing up for their email list so you'll get their letters is also a really great way to stay connected. I see there's a question in chat. I'm just going to finish up with no one was born knowing how to do this. Everybody can learn this. When I moved from a preschool teacher director to now a full-time advocate, I had to learn all these processes. And we all have to learn and practice. So that's why we say no one-hit wonders. really thinking about, practice calling people, practice writing people, practice public speaking, practice introducing yourself, sometimes getting out of our own comfort zone and really taking advantage of the opportunities. It pays to prepare, so don't wing it. We can get you information, and remember that you are smart, powerful leaders for children. We also have a bunch of resources that we will put in the chat. The Secretary of State, the governor will have a website as part of mass.gov, the legislature, and then these are some articles that cover the election. So as we say thank you, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and look in the chat. Okay, so thank you. Neri's putting all the information. So who owns the bills? If I want to file a bill, do I need a legislator to co-sponsor? Or more relevant, if the Common Start wants to refile, do they need a legislator? Yes. So you need a legislator because they are the people that make, they file the bills, they pass the bills. Often what happens is if you have an idea or you want to change something, you would connect with either your legislator in your own district, or you would reach out to a legislator who has been very active on the issue. So, for example, there are legislators who have really taken the lead in advocating for education. So it certainly is, you do need a legislator to actually file for it, but we've often seen people work in partnership. So advocates and people on the ground will help inform what the legislation looks like, and then it will get kind of, every bill that's filed needs to kind of get turned into like the format of a piece of legislation. So sometimes they call it legislative ease because the language is really written and following the protocol for policies. So thank you for that question. And then let me see, could someone add the links to the chat? Okay, we'll put that in. And I think those are all the questions. I can look at the Q&A to make sure we don't have any questions. We have had some. The questions that were answered in the chat is, what's the timing for learning about the EEC commissioner appointment and about the new interim? So is January 20th the only shot? What we have seen historically is there are always opportunity to file a bill, a late file. We've often seen this in times of challenge. If something happens and there's an immediate need that needs to be addressed, yes. We also know, like, the economic development bill is another great example, that even the bill that they worked on to pass during the before July, it got reformatted and updated for the one that just passed in November. So there's always an opportunity, but it's harder to get the same momentum sometimes if you have a late file. Titus, did you have a question?
Sure. Can you hear me okay? Well, I just
Yes.
wanted to thank everyone for coming today. This is Titus with Strategies for Children. And I just wanted to emphasize that you are experts. You know your children, your families, your communities, and you have a much, much better chance than we do at making a strong personal connection to your own legislators. So please think of creative ways that you can connect with your state legislators. Remember, Amy said there's 200 of them, and find out who yours are. If they're new, welcome them, send them something, a letter or a greeting, invite them to your program. There's just so many ways that you can make that connection. And this work is all about relationships. We have some relationships at the state level. We have some information that we've shared today about the overall process for the state, but you are the expert on your community, And so I just encourage you to think outside the box and do what you can to make those connections. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Titus, and thanks for joining that. While we have a minute, and please keep questions coming and raise your hand if you would like to come live. I just wanted to show you the 2 websites that are very helpful kind of in the next phase. And this is the first one. It's the, if you go to elections and voting, and where you see find my election information, you also will post in here, this is how you get your kind of who represents you information. So you'll see you put your street number, your street name, the suffix, whether it's a road, avenue, or boulevard, the city or town, and your zip code. And then when you hit show my results, and it will show you everyone that is your representative. This is also the legislature's part of mass.gov, and you can see it's organized. Right now it says the 192nd General Court. After January, it will be the 193rd General Court. But you can see that there's a section for bills and laws, for budget, for legislators. So if we just go down to the legislators, you can see there they also have find your legislators, redistricting. If we look right now for all leadership, you can see right now there's profiles of the Senate President and the Speaker of the House. And then you can see the leaders in each of the chambers. So this is another excellent resource. It will have, once everything gets scheduled for next session, they'll have the joint sessions. So you can see today, there is a joint session in the House. If there's any hearings, they get announced here. If the committees are here. So if you look at joint committees, and remember this is for right now, we can look at the the Joint Committee on Education, and it lists the members. So this is a joint committee, so there are members from both the House and the Senate. They list the chairs and vice chairs with photos, and then you can see the members underneath. So there's many opportunities to get information. We are happy to help you find that information and share it with you, and really think about the best way. We can give you also sample templates for emails and letters. We will have a list of all the updated legislators that we can make available to you, their contact information. When you look on the mass.gov legislature, you will see the legislator, their email address, and their state house room number. Again, because of the transition, the best thing to do if you're going to send a paper copy is just say, dear Representative Alice Peisch, State House, Boston, Massachusetts, 02133. And then they will find them. So not worry about the room number in the beginning. Any other thoughts, reactions, questions? We are so grateful that you've joined us today. We will not be one-hit wonders. We will continue to share this information. We really encourage you to come to the 9:30 call, both in the morning and at night. It really has been a wonderful opportunity to break all of this down and talk about really specific, smaller parts of the system instead of trying to understand everything at once. I just want to remind you that you are powerful and smart advocates for children. And sometimes you can feel not that way, but we're here to tell you that you are. And we really want to think about ways that we can best support you at the state level, at the federal level, and especially at your local level. We have heard time and time again from policymakers how critical it is for them to hear voices from people who are doing work every day with children and families, and then what that means for the policies that we want to see happen for them. So we will leave it 30 more seconds if people have chat or they want to come live. We so appreciate you joining us, and we so appreciate our partners in this work, all the folks who are working on legislative agendas, working on building capacity for more people to be part of this process. We're just so grateful for that. I also want to thank Excel Linguistics for their interpretation. And as I said in the beginning, we will have recordings available both in English and Spanish that will be able to be shared with folks. We are also happy to think about how we can share this information and empower you to share with your own staff, your board of directors, your partners in this work at the local level, because we are going to need everybody working together to really see the change and kind of build on this momentum that we've had for children and families over the past 2 years. So go get them, write your congratulations letters, take opportunities to introduce yourself, and just remember that we're all doing this to make things better and stronger for children and families. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time.